3 years after I passed away, my parents finally showed up at my boarding school. They were only there because Serafina's kidney condition had worsened. She desperately needed a transplant. They clutched the donor papers, but they couldn't find a trace of me anywhere. When they demanded to know my whereabouts, the teacher scoffed. That orphan with no one to look after her? She had terminal stomach cancer. She fell ill shortly after arriving, was rushed to the hospital, and passed away. She's long gone. My parents, however, were convinced that I was just colluding with the teacher to scam them. My father exploded with rage. That brat stopped studying and ran off to mess around. Tell her this. If she doesn't show up within 3 days, we're cutting her off completely. She won't see another dime of support from us. The teachers looked at each other, confused. What support? There hasn't been a single penny in her account for years. Where did she go? She's not in class during school hours. My parents kicked the dormitory door open, clearly agitated. The room was empty. The bed with my name tag was covered in thick layers of dust, making them cough uncontrollably. They quickly pulled Serafina behind them for protection. Don't step inside. Don't let this disaster's filth infect you. The commotion was so loud that the dorm supervisor came upstairs, hands on her hips, and demanded to know what was going on. You're at the wrong place, aren't you? Only an orphan with no parents lives in this room. My mother curled her lip and let out a cold, sharp huff. You little liar. She must be out gallivanting with some man, not even bothering to come back to the dorm. My father agreed. What a disgrace to the family. If Serafina wasn't sick, I wouldn't even have come to look for her. I'm humiliated. The supervisor stood there in a daze, silent for a long time before speaking. She wasn't gallivanting. She arrived with terminal stomach cancer. She couldn't afford treatment and passed away 3 years ago. They froze for a moment, then burst into mocking laughter. Don't joke. She was healthy as a horse. How could she have terminal cancer? How much did Alara pay you to lie to us? With that, my father shoved a few bills into the supervisor's hand. His eyes were filled with impatience. I don't care where she's hiding. Just tell her this. If she doesn't appear within 3 days, we're cutting her off. She won't get a single penny more. The supervisor rubbed the fresh, crisp banknotes and looked up, scanning my parents' expensive clothes and luxury watches. Such wealthy relatives. It's a shame you didn't show up 3 years ago. She shook her head with pity. That poor girl never used any support money. There wasn't a cent in her account. She couldn't even afford the cheapest painkillers. In her final moments, she was screaming for her mother and father, dying in agony. That was the truth. In my final moments, I was stripped of all hope, consumed by unbearable pain. I had become a wandering spirit. My parents dismissed the supervisor's words entirely. They rushed Serafina back to the hospital, pulling every string to find a kidney, desperate to keep her alive. If they had spent even a fraction of that effort on me, they would have found my death certificate in seconds. But they didn't. Wasting half a day looking for their unfilial daughter was the greatest sacrifice they were willing to make. Serafina was their precious treasure, the apple of their eye. As for me, I was the unwanted second child, a violation of family planning that had cost them their jobs, a walking disaster. So, I was supposed to accept their bias. 3 years ago, I got into a prestigious high school with top marks, and my parents finally started paying some attention to me. But before I could enjoy it, tragedy struck. Serafina fell down the stairs at my birthday party and broke both her legs. Alara pushed me. She sobbed in my mother's arms, a flicker of cunning in her eyes, even though she had jumped herself. No one listened to my defense. My parents were furious and immediately canceled my high school enrollment. I was dumped into a boarding school. Serafina was badly hurt, so they stayed by her side, not even taking me to register for school. When I tried to register, the teachers called my parents a dozen times. No one answered. Half a day later, my mother called back, sounding annoyed. My daughter is resting after surgery. Stop harassing us with your calls. I only have one daughter, Serafina. I don't know who this Alara is. She hung up with a sharp click. The teachers looked at me with pity and marked me as without parents on my records. I wiped my tears and tried to swipe my card for tuition, but a cold electronic voice sounded. Insufficient funds, no money, no love. I pushed myself to work part-time jobs everywhere to earn enough for tuition, but my body, damaged by poor nutrition, finally hit its limit. Terminal stomach cancer. It required a massive amount of money to treat, but my parents' numbers were always unreachable. The teachers, believing I was an orphan, organized a small donation, but it wasn't enough. Alone, I curled into a ball in the corner of the hospital room, the pain so sharp it felt like my bones were vibrating. I still held on to hope. My parents would come, I could still be saved, but in that endless wait, the pain eroded my nerves, and death arrived in the silence. I was left to rot in a crowded ward with no one to visit me. Serafina, meanwhile, enjoyed a private VIP suite, with doctors checking on her every day. I don't think my sister has forgiven me yet. Her eyes reddened, her voice trembling with manufactured hurt. I must have done something wrong to make her jealous. It's not her fault she pushed me down those stairs 3 years ago. My father was heartbroken. He wiped her dry face and said, "She bullied you so much, yet you're still trying to speak up for her. You're just too kind. Don't worry, Serafina. We'll find that brat and make her donate her kidney to you." After gently soothing her, my father walked out of the room. His gaze turned ice cold as he pressed the call button. My name, Alara, flashed on the screen. The mechanical ringing echoed through the empty hallway, but I was already dead. Who was going to pick up? The 3-day deadline passed, and they found no trace of me. They returned to the school, angrier than before. How can you teachers act like this, helping a student pull such a twisted prank? My mother berated every teacher in sight, stamping her feet in frustration. My daughter's kidney condition is worsening. She can't wait. How much did Alara pay you? I'll pay double. No, 10 times that. The teachers were exhausted from explaining, and finally, someone slammed the table. It was my homeroom teacher, Mr. Miller. He had always felt sorry for me and had taken care of me the most when I was sick. Seeing my parents acting so arrogant, he lost his temper. Our school isn't perfect, but we wouldn't lie about life and death. You threw your child away and didn't care about her for years, and now you come here to cause a scene. Go back and check her medical records at the hospital. I had suffered from stomach pain for a long time. My medical records clearly documented every stage from ulcers to cancer. I had even cautiously handed those records to my parents, hoping they would take me to a major hospital for a real checkup. But they only found out that the painkillers I took were actually just vitamins. Serafina had tugged on my father's sleeve and whimpered, "My sister is just trying to get your attention. That's why she's taking vitamins and faking an illness." They hugged her, and without even glancing at the documents, tore the medical records into pieces and threw them in my face. "You're so young and you've already learned to lie. If you bring us fake reports again, we're done with you." But the paleness of my face and the blood in my vomit were real. They chose not to see. After that day, I never mentioned my stomach pain to them again, until it was too late to turn back. Seeing that Mr. Miller was about to call security, the two of them stomped away in frustration. The hospital hallway was silent, and Serafina was sleeping soundly. On her bedside table sat a small cupcake with a card. It was scrawled with shaky handwriting. "Mom and Dad, you've worked so hard. I'm sorry for all the trouble I've caused while being sick." Seeing their beloved daughter preparing a surprise despite her own illness, their frustration vanished. My mother wiped away tears. They say daughters are like little comfort quilts, and she truly is. My father nodded, but then he thought of me, his voice hardening. Serafina is so obedient, unlike that disaster. She never gave us a moment of peace. Her own sister is dying, and she just plays disappearing games. They looked disgusted, but they couldn't stop thinking about what the teacher said. Check the medical records at the hospital. To check my records, they needed to prove they were my legal guardians. But 3 years ago, they had cruelly kicked me out and updated the household registration to include only the 3 of them. I had been kicked out, becoming the head of my own household by default. My mother rummaged through the drawers, slamming them shut in frustration. "Where is that curse's birth certificate? I can't find it. I must have thrown it away." My father held his nose and kicked open my old bedroom door, which had been converted into a storage closet filled with junk. He violently ripped open the nightstand drawer, but the documents weren't there. Instead, there was my diary. "Today I got a perfect score in math. Mom and Dad finally agreed to take me out. I'm so envious of my sister. I wish I had as many pretty clothes as she does." The closet was open. All my clothes were hanging there. They were sparse, taking up only half the rack. Mom always calls me a disaster. I'll study hard, and when I grow up, I'll make money to bring them luck. Will they stop yelling at me then? The diary pages were wrinkled, stained with teardrops. They were engrossed in it when their phones suddenly rang. The hospital calling to say Serafina had fallen into a coma. They rushed off, tossing my diary into the pile of junk. They sprinted to the hospital. Serafina wasn't in her room, so they panted their way to the surgery unit, collapsing against the wall only after the doctor confirmed she was stable. Emergency intervention was successful. She's not in immediate danger, but she needs to stay in observation for a few days. The doctor looked worried and urged them again to find a kidney donor quickly. My father nodded like a woodpecker and privately sent more money to the private investigators. Whatever it took, they had to find me. The next day, instead of the investigators, an unwelcome guest arrived. It was Mr. Miller, carrying a thick stack of files. Stop looking. Seeing the luxurious environment of the VIP room, he felt a sting of memory, thinking of the lonely girl I used to be. I had been stuck in a crowded ward with no money and no care. How could this compare to the VIP life Serafina led? He wiped his eyes and spoke slowly. "These are the medical records I collected for Alara, and her death certificate. The evidence is all here. Just leave Alara in peace." I floated in the air, quietly watching their reactions. The death certificate with the hospital's red seal was on top. It couldn't be faked. It was undeniable proof. Rip. The sound shattered the silence.
Rip. My father had torn the death certificate straight down the middle. Fake. His voice echoed through the VIP room. "This is fake. Alara is alive. She's hiding because she doesn't want to save her sister." Mr. Miller stared at him in disbelief. The man had just destroyed the only proof of his daughter's death, without even reading it. My mother immediately grabbed the rest of the documents and flung them onto the floor. Exactly. That ungrateful girl has always been jealous of Serafina. Now she's gone so far as to forge a death certificate? Disgusting. Sheets of paper scattered across the room like snow. Medical records, test results, hospital invoices, photographs. Every trace of my suffering was trampled beneath their feet. Mr. Miller's face went pale with anger. "You didn't even look at them." "I don't need to." My father's expression was cold. "That child lies as easily as breathing." Mr. Miller suddenly laughed. It wasn't amusement. It was despair. He bent down and picked up a photograph from the floor. Then he shoved it into my mother's hands. "Then explain this." My mother's brows furrowed. The photo showed me lying on a hospital bed. I was terrifyingly thin. My cheeks had sunk inward. My skin stretched tightly over my bones. A feeding tube emerged from my nose. The date stamp in the corner was from 3 years ago. My mother's pupils contracted. For the first time, uncertainty appeared on her face. Mr. Miller pulled out another photograph, then another, and another. Each one was worse. In the final picture, I looked less like a living person and more like a skeleton wrapped in skin. My father swallowed hard. Photos can be edited. Even he sounded unconvinced. Mr. Miller nodded.
Fine.
He opened the folder and withdrew a stack of payment records. Here are the donations teachers collected. Here are the receipts for her medication. Here are the hospital bills. Every single one is documented. My mother looked down. The signatures were real. The hospital seal was real. Everything was real. A strange silence filled the room. Then a weak voice suddenly broke it. Mom, Serafina had woken up. Her pale face peeked out from the hospital bed. Instantly, my parents rushed over. All attention shifted back to her. Mr. Miller watched the scene quietly. Even now, even with undeniable proof in front of them, their first instinct was still to choose Serafina. A bitter smile appeared on his face. Do you know what Alara's final words were? The room froze. For some reason, my mother felt her heart skip a beat. Mr. Miller looked directly at her. She kept asking for her parents. Please call my mom. Please call my dad. Tell them I'm scared. My mother's face turned white. Mr. Miller continued. Until the very end. She believed you would come. My father suddenly clenched his fists. The words felt like needles piercing his chest.
No.
That wasn't possible. Alara hated them. Didn't she? Wasn't she always rebellious? Always troublesome? Always causing problems? So why had she been calling for them? Mr. Miller pulled out one final item. A worn notebook. My diary. I found this beside her bed after she died. My mother stared blankly. The notebook opened to its final page. The handwriting was shaky and uneven, clearly written through pain. Dear Mom and Dad, I think I'm dying. The doctors say I probably won't make it. I don't blame you anymore. I just miss you. I really wanted to go home. If there's another life, can I be your daughter again? Maybe then you'll love me too. The room became deathly silent. A drop of water splashed onto the page. My mother blinked. Only then did she realize she was crying. For the first time in 3 years. For the first time in my entire life. She finally believed that I was gone. The tear hit the paper and smeared the ink. My mother stared at the blurred words as though they had become knives. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Even Serafina remained unusually quiet. My father's lips trembled. His voice cracked. That's not possible. Mr. Miller looked exhausted. Why isn't it possible? You abandoned her. You ignored every call from the school. You never paid her tuition. You never visited her in the hospital. Why is it so hard to believe she died alone? Every sentence landed like a hammer. My father opened his mouth to argue. Nothing came out, because for the first time, he couldn't find a single excuse. Mr. Miller turned to leave. At the door, he stopped. There was one more thing. He reached into his bag and produced a small envelope. The hospital gave me this after her cremation. My mother stared blankly. Cremation? The words seemed to shatter something inside her. Mr. Miller nodded. Nobody claimed her body. So, the hospital handled the arrangements. My mother staggered backward. Nobody claimed her body. Nobody claimed her body. Nobody claimed her body. The sentence echoed endlessly in her head. 3 years ago, while they were celebrating Serafina's birthday in a luxury restaurant, I had been reduced to ashes, and they hadn't even known. Mr. Miller handed over the envelope. Inside was a silver bracelet.
Cheap. Worn.
Slightly tarnished. My mother's breathing stopped. She recognized it instantly. Years ago, when money had been tight, she had bought matching bracelets for me and Serafina from a street vendor. Serafina's had broken within a week and been thrown away. Mine had never left my wrist, not even when I died. The bracelet slipped from my mother's trembling fingers and clattered onto the floor. The sound seemed deafening. My father slowly sank into a chair. His face had become gray. For the first time in years, memories surfaced. Not memories of Serafina. Memories of me. A little girl running toward him after school.
Dad.
I got first place. A little girl waiting by the window until midnight. Dad isn't home yet. A little girl secretly saving lunch money to buy him a birthday gift. The memories came one after another, each one sharper than the last. His chest tightened painfully. Had Alara really been that obedient? That desperate for their love? He couldn't remember a single time she had asked for anything expensive. Not once. Everything she ever wanted was so simple. A compliment, a hug, a family dinner. Things he had freely given Serafina every day. Meanwhile, on the hospital bed, Serafina watched the scene unfold. For the first time, genuine panic appeared in her eyes. This wasn't supposed to happen. The dead were supposed to stay buried. Why were they talking about Alara again? Why were her parents crying for Alara? Mom. Her weak voice broke the silence. Immediately, my mother looked up. The old habit remained. But this time, something was different. For the first time, she didn't rush over. Instead, her gaze lingered on Serafina's face. A thought she had never allowed herself before suddenly emerged. 3 years ago, there had been no witnesses, only Serafina's accusation, and they had believed her instantly, without asking questions, without investigating, without even letting Alara explain. My mother's fingers slowly tightened. Serafina. The room felt colder. Tell me honestly. Serafina's heart skipped a beat. My father's eyes also lifted. Both parents were staring at her now, not with affection, with scrutiny, the kind that made liars nervous. My mother's voice shook. When you fell down those stairs, did Alara really push you? For the first time in years, fear crossed Serafina's face, and floating beside the hospital ceiling, I smiled sadly, because after all this time, the truth was finally knocking on the door. Serafina's fingers tightened around the hospital blanket. For the first time, she didn't answer immediately. That hesitation was all it took. My father's expression darkened. 3 years ago, she had cried and accused me without missing a beat. Now, faced with the same question, she looked terrified. Serafina. My mother's voice became sharper. Answer me. Tears instantly welled up in Serafina's eyes. I don't remember. The room fell silent. My father let out a harsh laugh. It wasn't a happy sound. You don't remember? You remembered clearly enough 3 years ago. Serafina's face turned pale. My mother felt a chill crawl down her spine. For years, she had convinced herself that every decision they made had been for the family's good. But now she began replaying countless memories. Every accusation, every conflict, every punishment. And somehow, every single one had started with Serafina's tears. Mr. Miller watched quietly. He had seen this realization coming. The truth didn't arrive all at once. It arrived in cracks. And once those cracks appeared, they spread. My mother took a shaky breath. What happened that day? Serafina lowered her head. The door suddenly opened. A nurse walked in carrying a chart. The tension shattered for a moment. I'm sorry to interrupt. The lab results are back. The nurse handed the report to the doctor standing nearby. The doctor's expression changed almost immediately. He frowned. Then he read the results again. My father noticed. What is it? The doctor hesitated. There's something unusual. Everyone stared. The doctor slowly placed the report on the table. Your daughter's kidney function is significantly better than last month's results.
What?
My father stood up. The doctor nodded. Not just slightly better. Much better. Frankly, these numbers don't match the condition we've been seeing. My mother blinked. What does that mean? The doctor frowned. It means we need to run additional tests. Something doesn't add up. A flash of panic crossed Serafina's face. Tiny, almost invisible. But my parents saw it. The doctor's words awakened another memory. A memory my mother had forgotten. Years ago, when Serafina was 12, she had suddenly claimed severe chest pain. The family rushed her to the emergency room. After hours of tests, doctors found nothing wrong. At the time, they assumed the equipment had missed something. Now, my mother's stomach twisted. How many times had that happened? How many illnesses? How many emergencies? How many crises that always seemed to revolve around Serafina? The doctor cleared his throat. We'll repeat all examinations. Until then, I recommend delaying any transplant decisions. The room grew deathly quiet. A transplant. A transplant that would have required my kidney. A transplant they had been willing to force me into, even after years of neglect. Even after believing I was hiding from them. Even after my death. My father slowly sat down. His hands trembled. For the first time, a horrifying possibility entered his mind. What if? What if everything had been built on lies? What if the daughter they sacrificed was innocent, and the daughter they protected was not? Serafina suddenly burst into tears. Mom,
Dad.
I'm scared. Normally those words would have sent them rushing to comfort her. This time they remained frozen. Their silence frightened her more than anything else. My mother looked at the bracelet lying on the floor, then at my diary, then at Serafina, and finally at the empty space near the ceiling where I floated unseen. A sob escaped her throat. Too late. Everything was too late. The daughter who had begged for her love was gone. The daughter who had waited by the phone was gone. The daughter who had died calling for her parents was gone. No apology could reach the dead. No amount of money could buy back 3 lost years. No transplant could save a child whose heart had already been broken long before cancer took her life. And for the first time since my death, my parents began to understand that the punishment awaiting them wasn't legal, financial, or social. It was living the rest of their lives knowing exactly what they had done, and knowing they would never get the chance to make it right.